I need to start this with a truth that has been clawing at the inside of my chest for far too long. I lied. Not because you deserved deception, not because I wanted to manipulate anything between us, but because I was terrified of the thought that if you saw me as I really am, everything between us would evaporate. I told you an age that wasn't mine, shaped a version of myself that felt safer, softer, more palatable than the man I saw in the mirror every morning. I convinced myself the lie was harmless, temporary, something I could correct once I felt stable, but the longer I carried it, the more it wrapped around my life like a vine I couldn't untangle. I told myself I needed to protect you from the flawed reality of me. But the truth is I was trying to protect myself from the possibility of your rejection. And now I'm here, finally facing what I never wanted to admit. I built the beginning of our connection on fear instead of trust, and I can't breathe beneath the weight of it anymore. When I first met you, I felt something shift inside me, like a door I'd kept sealed for years suddenly cracked open. You felt familiar, like someone my soul recognized long before my mind caught up. And that terrified me. I wasn't ready for someone to see me in my rawness. I wasn't ready for someone to look at me with the kind of clarity you carry. So I hid. I shaved off pieces of myself and replaced them with stories that felt more acceptable. I thought if I gave you a polished version of me, you would trust me, want me, maybe even stay. I didn't realize that by hiding my real age, my real identity, my real wounds, I was also hiding the parts of me that were longing to be loved, not for the mask, but for the truth behind it. Every time I spoke with you, the lie grew heavier, and the real me sank deeper into the shadows. And now, speaking this aloud, I see how much of my silence was rooted in fear, not of you, but of facing myself. The truth is, I didn't lie because I wanted you to believe I was someone extraordinary. I lied because I believed the real me wasn't enough. I thought the difference in age would make you question my maturity, or worse, my intentions. I thought that if you knew my real background, where I came from, the failures I've tried to bury, you would see me through the same critical lens I've used on myself for years. I'm used to being the one who is underestimated, dismissed, written off as someone who hasn't figured out life the right way. When you came into my world, I didn't know how to show up without those old insecurities dragging behind me like weights. So I shaped a narrative that felt safer, a version of me I thought you could accept. And every time I spoke to you, I felt the contrast between the man you believed I was and the man I actually am. That gap became unbearable, and the guilt threaded itself through everything until it finally demanded to be acknowledged. I want you to know something, my feelings for you were always real, even when the details around me weren't. That's the part that destroys me the most. I didn't lie to play with your heart or manipulate your trust. I lied because I was already falling, and I panicked at the thought that one truth could erase everything we hadn't even had the chance to explore yet. I kept telling myself, I'll fix it later. I'll tell her when she really knows me. But later kept stretching farther and farther away. And then, every day you showed me more compassion, more intuition, more spiritual depth, and I felt even more unworthy. I watched myself become a prisoner of a story I created to protect my fragile ego. Meanwhile, the part of me that longed for honesty began to pound against my ribs like it was begging to be freed. I knew this moment would come, the moment where the truth stood between us, demanding to be spoken, no matter the cost. So here it is, the beginning of untangling everything I've been hiding. I wasn't honest about my age, and I wasn't honest about the fuller truth of who I am. I simplified my identity, omitted parts of my past, and wore a version of myself that felt less threatening to my own insecurities. I wanted to be the man who had it together, who looked cleaner, smoother, more appealing on the surface. But the truth is, I'd been battling my shadows and my doubts for years, and I thought that coming to you with all of that would make you turn away. You, with your intuition. You, with your ability to see beyond the physical. You, with your light. I thought if you truly saw the parts of me I still struggle to accept, you'd close the door. But now I see that hiding from you was the same as hiding from my own healing. And if this connection is meant to be real, then it can only stand on truth. The fear of judgment has lived in me longer than I can remember. It shaped me, limited me, convinced me that authenticity was a luxury I couldn't afford. When I looked at you, I saw someone who could see straight into the parts of me I've always tried to keep hidden. That alone was overwhelming. And instead of standing in front of you as my unfiltered self, I gave you a safer, diluted version of me. I feared that if you saw the real scars, the real age, the real path I took to get here, you wouldn't see me as worthy of your time or your energy. Every message I sent you had this quiet tremble behind it, the fear that if I slipped, even once, you'd notice the cracks. And I hated that feeling, because it made me realize how deeply I already cared for you. The truth is, your presence alone pulled me into a confrontation with parts of myself I'd avoided for years. There were nights when the guilt kept me awake, pressing against my chest like a weight I couldn't shift. I would read your messages and feel this mixture of tenderness and dread. Tenderness because you made me feel something sacred. Dread because every moment I kept the truth from you was another moment I was betraying the connection I claimed to value. Shame is a quiet thing, but it grows fast. It sat with me every time I thought about coming clean. It whispered that honesty would destroy everything, that you'd never look at me the same way again. And still, something in me kept pushing, this small, trembling voice telling me that I couldn't keep lying to someone who made my soul feel seen. But I didn't know how to break open without breaking everything else around me. So I stayed silent, and the silence became another lie. I kept telling myself that you didn't need to know everything right away, that I would reveal the truth in pieces, gently, once I felt ready. But the truth is, readiness never came. The shame only grew bigger, and the fear wrapped tighter around me, until even simple conversations felt heavy with the weight of everything I wasn't saying. I started pulling back, not because I didn't care, but because the guilt became louder than your voice in my mind. I worried that if I stayed close to you, eventually you'd catch the inconsistencies, the hesitations, the places where the story didn't fully align. I feared the moment you'd confront me and I'd have to admit everything. So I hid, not because I wanted distance, but because I was terrified of the truth finally catching up to me. Inside, there was this constant war, one part of me desperate to be honest with you, to finally let you see the real man behind the mask, and another part terrified that honesty would destroy whatever fragile bond we had formed. I would rehearse the confession in my mind, imagining how you might react. Would you be angry? Hurt? Disappointed? Would you feel betrayed? I feared your eyes hardening. I feared that quiet shift in your tone that would tell me everything was changing. But most of all, I feared losing the spiritual connection that had awakened parts of me I didn't even know were dormant. You made me want to grow. You made me want to be better. But I didn't know how to rebuild a foundation without tearing down the illusion I had created. The shame didn't just sit inside me, it consumed me. I could feel it altering the way I spoke, the way I showed up, the way I responded. I began overthinking everything, worried you'd catch the slightest slip. I hated myself for lying. I hated the cowardice of it. And I hated that fear had so much power over me. But the more I tried to hide, the more obvious it became that honesty was the only path forward. Something within me, my higher self, maybe, kept whispering that you deserved the truth, even if it meant losing you. That staying silent was a deeper betrayal than any uncomfortable confession, and eventually, I couldn't run from that inner voice anymore. The weight became too much, and the lie began to suffocate the very connection I was trying to protect. The turning point came quietly, without warning, one of those ordinary moments that shouldn't mean anything, yet somehow shakes your soul awake. I remember rereading something you said, something so simple, so honest, so free of pretense, and it hit me like a blow to the chest. You were showing up authentically, without masks, without distortion, trusting that your truth was enough. And I realized I had been doing the opposite. You were offering me a version of sincerity that I had been too afraid to reciprocate. That moment cracked me open, because it made me see the imbalance, the way you moved with transparency while I hid behind fear. It forced me to face the fact that I couldn't keep walking toward you while dragging a lie behind me. Something in me shifted. Something in me whispered, you can't build love on a foundation made of fear. And for the first time, I truly listened. As that realization settled in, the lie that once felt like a shield suddenly became unbearable. I could feel it burning under my skin every time I thought about you. I could feel it tightening around my throat every time I considered reaching out. The guilt wasn't passive anymore, it was active, pressing, insistent. It demanded to be spoken. And I knew that if I didn't tell you the truth, I would lose the connection anyway, not because you'd walk away, but because I would keep sinking into my own avoidance. I saw how my silence was poisoning what could have been something pure. I saw how every delay, every hesitation, every half-truth was creating distance between us. And I realized that if I didn't break the cycle now, I would repeat the same patterns that have sabotaged every meaningful relationship in my life. I couldn't do that again, not with you. Not with someone who felt divinely placed on my path. So, I began preparing myself for the moment of truth. Not rehearsing excuses or trying to soften the blow, but actually sitting with the weight of what I'd done. I confronted my fears, the fear of losing you, the fear of being judged, the fear of being seen as a liar or a fraud. I sat with the shame that had been festering inside me, and I let it speak. It told me things I didn't want to hear. It reminded me of all the times I had hidden instead of standing in my authenticity. It reminded me of the moments in my past where I chose the easy lie over the difficult truth and paid the price later. And it showed me that this pattern wasn't about you, it was about me. About the parts of me that still don't believe I'm worthy of real connection, real love, real vulnerability. That clarity didn't make the confession easier. But it made it necessary. I reached the point where I couldn't pretend anymore. The mask I created was slipping, cracking at the edges, and every time you spoke with such intuitive depth, I felt myself wince internally because you were unknowingly speaking to the real me, the version I was hiding. You kept touching parts of my soul that I wasn't brave enough to reveal. And the contrast became unbearable. I realized the mask wasn't protecting me, it was suffocating me. I knew that if I wanted something genuine with you, I had to tear it off completely, stand there raw, exposed, vulnerable, and let you see everything I had tried so hard to hide. Even if it meant losing you. Even if it meant standing alone with the consequences of my choices. I couldn't continue living in the tension between who I said I was and who I truly am. My breaking point wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a collapse or a crisis. It was this quiet, piercing clarity that came over me one night, this realization that truth isn't something you can outrun. It will always find its way to the surface. And if you try to bury it, it will bury you instead. That night, I felt this internal shift, like my soul was tired of holding the weight of something that was never meant to be carried long term. I saw myself clearly, not as a villain, but as a man who has been afraid for too long. A man who has let fear lead him more often than courage. A man who wants to change. And I knew that the first step toward that change was telling you everything. Not because I expected forgiveness. Not because I wanted reassurance. But because you deserved honesty, and I deserved the chance to show up authentically for once in my life. I started thinking about all the moments where I could have told you earlier, all the pauses in conversation, all the emotional openings you gave me, all the times you encouraged honesty without even knowing what I was hiding. And I felt the weight of my missed chances. I realized how many opportunities one had wasted because I was too ashamed to speak. I thought about the times you shared your truths with me, your vulnerabilities, your intuition, and I offered you half-truths in return. That realization stung deeply. It made me confront the imbalance I had created, the way you opened your heart while I kept mine locked. And the guilt of that became heavier than the lie itself. I knew I could no longer ignore the truth when it was costing me the chance to truly connect with you. So this is where the breaking point truly happened, when I imagined a future where I never told you the truth. A future built on a false version of me. A future where every milestone, every moment of intimacy, every spiritual connection would be shadowed by the secret I had buried at the foundation. And the thought of that future felt wrong. It felt hollow. It felt like a betrayal of both our souls. I understood that if I wanted something real, something aligned, something worthy of the connection I feel with you, I had to tear down what was false and rebuild with truth. Even if the rebuilding meant starting alone. Even if it meant losing what we have. The truth just became louder than the fear. So here is the real me, without the mask. My age is not what I told you. I am older, wiser in some ways, more wounded in others, still learning how to stand in my own authenticity. I feared that the age difference would make you question my intentions, or make you see me as less stable, less worthy, less aligned with your path. But the truth is, age has never defined my soul. What defines me are the lessons I've lived, the scars I carry, the mistakes I've made, and the ways I'm still trying to grow. I come from a background that is far messier than the version I showed you, one shaped by instability, by losses, by moments of survival rather than grace. And I hid that because I didn't want you to see me as broken. I'm not the polished, put-together version I pretended to be. I am a work in progress, a man who has learned most of his lessons the hard way. I've struggled with self-worth, with identity, with knowing how to show up fully. I've carried wounds from past relationships where my honesty was used against me, where my vulnerability became ammunition. And because of that, I built these protective layers. I crafted personas. I learned how to give just enough truth to keep myself safe, while hiding the parts that felt too raw. But you bypassed all of that. You spoke to my soul, not my facade. You saw something in me I hadn't even dared to acknowledge. And instead of stepping into that truth, I hid from it, convinced I was not enough. The real me is imperfect, emotional, spiritual, stubborn, sensitive, quiet on the surface but loud internally. I feel deeply, maybe too deeply. I overthink. I worry. I care more than I admit. I'm someone who has been shaped by hardship but is still hopeful about love. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to grow from them. My intentions toward you were never based on the lie. They were based on something that felt divinely guided, something that shook me awake, something that made me want to be better. And now, in revealing all of this, I'm standing here trembling, not because I'm weak, but because this is the first time I've allowed someone to see me without the layers, without the lies, without the protective armor. This is me. The real me. And I hope, at the very least, that the honesty means something. Now that everything is out in the open, I feel this strange mixture of fear and relief running through me. Fear because I know the truth can change everything, your perception of me, the energy between us, the possibility of whatever future we might have had. Relief because after carrying this weight for so long, finally speaking it feels like taking my first full breath in months. I realize that hiding my identity didn't just keep you at a distance, it kept me from stepping fully into the man I want to become. I've always believed that authenticity is sacred, that honesty is a spiritual obligation, yet I failed to live by those values when it mattered most. And acknowledging that is humbling. I don't expect this confession to erase the impact of my choices, but I hope it shows you that I'm trying, truly trying, to show up differently now. There's more to who I am than the age or the name I gave you. The truth is, I come from a past that shaped me in ways I wasn't ready to talk about. I've lived through instability, through years of emotional silence, through moments where I didn't recognize myself. I battled my own shadows, old insecurities, fears of abandonment, fears of not being worthy of being seen. Those experiences made me guarded, made me believe I had to mold myself into whatever version seemed most acceptable. That's why lying felt like a reflex, an old survival pattern. But with you, that pattern became a cage. I saw how deeply your presence pulled me toward my own healing, and I knew I couldn't let the past dictate the man I showed up as. My truth isn't polished, and it isn't perfect, but it's real. And for the first time, I want you to have the real version of me, even if it costs me everything. What I haven't told you yet, the part that scares me the most, is that the reason I lied wasn't because I didn't trust you. It was because I cared too much, too fast. You awakened something inside me that I thought was numb. I felt this bond one couldn't explain, this gravitational pull that made me want to be near you even when I didn't fully understand why. And that intensity terrified me. I thought that if you knew my real age, my real story, my real identity, you might look at me differently. I was scared that you'd leave before I had the chance to even show you the depth of what I feel. So I hid behind a safer version of myself, telling myself it was temporary, telling myself I would reveal the truth once I felt secure. But security never came. Only fear. Only the quiet panic that if I didn't tell you soon, I would lose you anyway. You need to understand this part clearly. I lied because I didn't know how to show up authentically for someone I actually wanted to keep. Every time I pictured you learning the truth, the image in my mind was always the same, you turning away, disappointed, shutting the door. And the fear of that felt unbearable. I've lost people before, but losing you felt like it would break something much deeper, something spiritual. I wasn't prepared for the intensity of what this connection brought up in me, the self-awareness, the longing, the vulnerability. You made me feel seen, and that scared me more than anything. Because being seen means being known. And being known means giving someone the power to leave. And I didn't want to lose what we were building before it even had a chance to grow. The irony is, the very thing I feared, your rejection, is the thing my lie made more likely. I can see that now. I can see how my fear twisted something pure into something uncertain. And admitting that hurts. It forces me to confront the pattern I've carried for years, pushing people away by trying to control how they see me. I never wanted to control you, but I wanted to control the narrative of who I was, believing it would make me more acceptable. But that's not love. That's not alignment. That's fear disguised as self-preservation. And being honest about that is painful, but necessary. Because if I ever want to be the man you deserve, the man I want to be, I have to stop choosing fear over truth. What scares me the most now is the possibility that this confession is too late. That I waited too long, hesitated too many times, pulled back at the exact moments I should have leaned in. I don't know how you'll react to this. I don't know if you'll forgive me, or if this will be the moment your intuition tells you to walk away. But I want you to know that I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not standing behind excuses or masks. I'm here, fully, honestly, trembling with vulnerability but committed to the truth. Because you deserve someone who shows up authentically. And even if that person ends up not being me, because of the damage I've caused, I want you to know I am trying to be that man, for you and for myself. Losing you is a fear that has lived in the back of my mind since the moment I realized how much you mean to me. It's ironic, because the lie I told was my attempt to keep you close, but in the end, it only created distance. And yet, beneath all the fear, there is still hope. Hope that you'll see the sincerity behind this confession. Hope that you'll recognize that my deception wasn't born from disrespect, but from the overwhelming intensity of what I felt for you. Hope that you'll understand that loving someone can sometimes reveal the parts of ourselves we're still learning to heal. I can't undo what I've done. But I can stand here and own it. Fully. Without excuses. Without defensiveness. Just truth. I'm not asking you to forget what I've done, or to pretend it didn't hurt. I'm not asking you to reassure me, or to comfort me, or to carry the weight of my mistakes. What I'm asking, gently, humbly, is that you hear me with the same openness you've always shown. That you let this truth settle, breathe, and be seen for what it is, an attempt to step into a more honest version of myself. I'm not trying to win you back with pretty words or dramatics. I'm not trying to sway your emotions. I'm simply giving you the truth I should have given you from the beginning. And whatever you choose to do with it, I will respect, because honesty means accepting the consequences with grace. If you choose to walk away, I will understand. I won't blame you. I won't chase you. I won't try to change your mind. I will take accountability for the impact of my choices, and I will carry the lesson forward. But if you choose to stay, even in a small way, even with caution, I promise you one thing, you will never get another masked version of me again. No more filters. No more half-truths. No more fear leading my decisions. If I am allowed to show up in your life, it will be as my authentic self, raw, flawed, but honest, because I've learned that truth is the foundation of real connection, and I will never again risk losing something sacred by hiding who I am. So this is me, standing here without defenses, without rehearsed lines, without the layers I used to hide behind. I'm not begging. I'm not demanding. I'm simply offering my truth, trembling but resolute. What happens next is up to you. Whether this is a closing or a beginning, I want you to know that you changed me. You awakened a part of my soul that had been asleep for years. You pushed me toward honesty, toward healing, toward accountability, and even if this confession costs me the connection, I needed to give it to you. Because you deserve truth. You deserve authenticity. You deserve someone who shows up fully. And whether or not that person gets to stand beside you, I will forever be grateful that you were the one who made me finally take off the mask.